Hey friends, we're back with another book review. We are going to be talking about Any-3 by Mike Shipman. Love this book. Let's jump in. Now, I picked this book up at a conference a couple months ago, and I read it right before my summer, and it quickly became one of the most useful books that I've ever read. Any-3, if you don't know what it is, it's a gospel sharing tool. It was created by a missionary who served in the Middle East in a Muslim populated country. And he and his teammates quickly found out this tool that they started practicing and creating and sharpening, and they saw that it had great use when talking to Muslims, and they even have applied it to other religions as well. It's just an incredible tool that's highly conversational and supernatural that has quickly become my favorite tool to share the gospel as well. So the book is Any-3, subtitle, Anyone, Anywhere, Anytime. Lead Muslims to Christ Now. And again, it's by Mike Shipman. So this whole book is just me teaching a tool, the methods, kind of the story behind it, and some different ways that you can use it in different contexts. So this book, I'm going to judge it by its readability and its usability. The goal of this book that the author has is to teach you this way to share the gospel with people that you might not have another chance to talk to again. It's going to be a highly conversational, highly natural way, which I actually really appreciate. So, like, sometimes gospel tools feel unnatural or forced. And I hope you know what I mean by that. Now, we have to understand that only the gospel is the power to save. We understand that we are separated from God, and this is a problem. Because of our sin, we are separated from a holy God. And if nothing changes, we'll be apart from Him forever into eternity. But the good news is that God did something, right? He came to earth as Jesus. He lived the perfect life that we could not live. He died on the cross to pay for our sin, for our rebellion. And then 3 days later came back to life, proving who He was and offering new life and transformation and forgiveness and redemption with Himself, so that now through Jesus we can come back into relationship with God. Now, despite our best efforts, nothing we could ever do can bring us back into relationship with God apart from the work of Jesus. See, we're broken, and a broken thing can't fix itself. It's like this, if we're just collecting things into a jar, right? We have some broken things in our jar, right? We've put some bad stuff in there. We've made some bad choices. Now, it doesn't matter how many good things, let's say pieces of gold, you drop into that jar, it's never going to be pure because there's broken stuff in there. There's brokenness there. Well, it's the same with us, all humans. We've got brokenness. Each of us have made broken decisions that have not lived up to God's standard. Now, it doesn't matter how many good things we put into that jar, whether that be good works, caring for the poor, praying, no matter what it is, no matter how many good things we do, it can never bring us back into a relationship with a holy God, because He is holy and we will never be by ourselves. That's why we need the sacrifice of Jesus. And that's why no matter where you come from, no matter what country, what culture, or even what religion you come from, you need the work of Jesus. You cannot make it back to God on your own. Jesus came to bring life to all peoples over all the earth, but only you can choose to accept Him. So this is why missionaries go to other countries. It's not to push an agenda. It's not to change people's culture, but rather it's to bring them life and forgiveness, which only Jesus offers. Only He can bring us back into relationship with God and bring us hope for eternity. So that's why people like Mike Shipman have practiced these different methods. Now, like I said, some gospel tools feel forced. And since the gospel is such an important message, I just want to make sure that we're not messing up and we're not burning bridges in the ways that we're sharing it. But at the same time, just because we're nervous or don't want to mess it up, that gives us no excuse to not share it. We should be sharing it. In all our feebleness, we should be trying to share this with people. And that's why I love this tool, because it is so natural. It feels so natural when you're talking to people. So let's just dive into the book. I'm going to be judging it by its usability and by its readability. Let's start with its readability. This book is 152 pages long. It's composed of 15 chapters and 2 appendices. Each chapter is an average of about 6 to 10 pages. There are a couple chapters that are a little longer than that, but overall they're pretty short chapters. You can see that the text is pretty large, which is nice. And then there are going to be lots of just divisions and headings, which is nice that you'll see stuff on every page. Because if you know me, if I just see a page with a ton of text on it and it's small and chapters are really long, it's really hard for me to stick with it, even if it's really good content. So I like the shorter chapters with more stuff thrown in there and more divisions because it keeps me engaged. I feel like I actually able to stick with it and take it in a more significant way. So as far as readability goes, I'm going to give this chapter a 5 out of 5. Just because the chapters are short. It's kind of straight to the point, and there are lots of stories as well, which I like hearing stories because those stick with me. There are lots of great stories in this book that I really enjoyed and got me motivated. So a 5 out of 5 on readability. As far as usability, I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. And why do I say that? I want to actually put this as a challenge, not to put down the book, but to put down us. It's going to be very useful if you are in the practice of sharing the gospel, particularly with people of other religions, more so than atheists. You can probably put a spin on it to use it for atheists as well, but more so for Hindus, Muslims, and Buddhists. If you're in the practice of sharing the gospel, this can be one of the most useful and practical books you could read. If, however, you're not in the consistent practice of sharing the gospel, it's not going to be as useful, but hopefully it'll be a good challenge to put you out there and start trying to do this. Because like I said, only the gospel is the power to save people. So we should be out there and trying to share it. And we should do that with caution, wanting to do it well, not mess up the gospel. Of course, we want to be out there. The anxiety to fail is no excuse to not try at all when people's eternity is on the line. Jesus wants all people to come to him and be saved. So we should be out there doing that. So a 4 out of 5 on usability. It's very useful in teaching you how to use the tool. And I'm going to unpack it briefly here, but I'll make another video in the future on how to use the actual tool and give a couple examples. But basically, in this tool, you're getting someone to unpack their view, their religion, how they're solving their sin, and then you get to unpack your own. And this can be highly natural. Let's just imagine that I'm in a conversation with somebody and the conversation of religion comes up. Maybe we are saying like, oh, there's a mosque down the street, or I meet someone with a bangle and ask for the religious meaning behind it. Or, maybe we hear a song that's a worship song or something, and we get talking about religion, whatever it is. And the conversation might shift towards that area. I'd be like, oh, interesting. Yeah. What about you? Are you Muslim, Hindu, Buddhist, Sikh, Christian? What do you believe? Then the other person will be like, I'm Muslim, for example, or I'm Hindu, or, whatever. I'd be like, oh, okay. So, and then you can say something along the lines of, in your religion, what do you do to get your sin forgiven? This is something that we kind of all share in common, that we have this problem of guilt and sin that we're all trying to atone for and come back into relationship with God with over. So for you, how are you getting your sin forgiven? And then they'll say, oh, I do the 5 pillars, or, I pray when I feel guilty, or I do good things. And then the next question is, so are your sins forgiven yet? And everybody's going to say, well, no, I'm working on it. And then you might ask, well, when are you going to have your sins forgiven? When will you know? And that's the thing about every other religion. People don't really get to that point when they're like, okay, then I'll know my sins are forgiven. It's kind of a toss-up when they get to the end of their life. For a Muslim, it ultimately comes down to Allah's decision in the moment. And it really has very little to do with what that person did or didn't do. It's more of an arbitrary decision. And the same thing, Hindus, when they come to the end of their life, they don't really know how they're going to be judged, but they just try to do good things and hopefully that they get their karma balanced out. But they don't really know. So most other religions have this insecurity that other people have about getting their sin forgiven. They try to do stuff towards it, but they never really know. They don't have hope in that. And that's where Christianity is different. That's where you can come and say, oh, interesting. You see, what I believe is a little bit different. And then you share the gospel as such. I believe that, because we're separated from God because of our sin, there needs to be a solution to that, right? That's why I believe that God is holy and we are all sinful. So there's no amount of good stuff that we could ever do to come back into relationship with a holy God. No matter how many good things I do, no matter how many times I pray, no matter how many times I go to the temple or whatever it is, none of that can ever bring me back into relationship with God. I need a payment for my sin. Now, that's the good news about Christianity. God came to earth as Jesus, and he lived the perfect life. You know, you and I, we make mistakes every day. Jesus did make one. He lived a perfect life. And then he died on the cross to pay for the sins of all humankind, everyone who ever lived and ever will live. He paid for our sin. And then he came back to life like no one else has. He brought himself back to life, proving to be God and showing that what he did to pay for our sin was finished. So now that anyone who believes in him, believes that Jesus is God, he died for our sin and rose again, and anyone who makes him king of their life and follows him will have all their sins forgiven and will have hope and assurance that they have a relationship with God and will be with God into eternity. That's what I believe is a little different. And then you ask them, do you believe what I told you? And that's the really awesome part to finish this. You get to share the gospel, and then you ask them, do you believe what I've told you? And maybe they'll say, well, no. And, you know, if they're open and talking more, you can be like, oh, interesting. What are your thoughts? Or what do you disagree with? And you can flesh that out a little bit. If they say, yeah, I believe that, then you can unpack that a little more and be like, so do you trust in Jesus and what he did? Like, are you wanting to give your life to him and have this assurance of hope? If they say yes, then you can walk them through how to find hope and how to follow Jesus and believe in him, commit their life to him, and bring them into the fold, into the family of faith and this hope in Jesus. So that's the gist of the tool. I'm going to unpack it a bit more detailed in a future video. But that's the book, Any-3. I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10, combining the readability and usability. It really should be a 10 out of 10, but unfortunately the fact is that not all of us are out there sharing the gospel regularly. And part of that's our culture. You know, it's a little harder in Western culture where everybody's busy and more individualistic, but we should be out there and trying, be in the habit of sharing the gospel with people. So that's the book. I highly recommend that you pick it up. Again, it's a short read. Chapters are short. It's going to be very useful for you. I think it's the most natural way to share the gospel because it literally is just going to regular conversations. And it feels really natural in the questions that they use. It doesn't feel forced or pushy. It feels like a natural conversation. So this is my new favorite way to share the gospel with people. And I want to highly recommend that you pick it up. If you want to see other books that I recommend, I've got a playlist that I'll leave a link to right here. And I'm going to be making some more book review videos coming up pretty soon. But I hope you find this helpful. I hope you'll go pick up the book. I'll leave a link to it down in the description if you want to go look for it. But having said that, thanks for watching, and I will see you guys next time.